And if I'm serving to stretch it out a little bit, I may be one of the few people here who personally knew Rosa Parks. I'm Bob Zellner. I'm from Alabama, actually Lower Alabama, L.A. I got to know Mrs. Parks when I was a college student in Montgomery, Alabama. And I'd like to tell you a couple of short anecdotes about Rosa Parks. When Nelson Mandela first came to this country after his great service in prison and as a liberator of South Africa, the people in New York and Washington asked Mandela, what would you like to see in the United States? And he said, I want to go to Detroit. And they said, why? He said, I want to see Rosa Parks. They scurried about and got together a program in Detroit. All of the dignitaries were there. At the last minute, they said, did anybody invite Rosa Parks? And they began to wonder, where does she live? Where is she? She lived in Detroit. They had no idea of the national treasure that lived in Detroit. They called her and said, could you come to the airport for the meeting with Nelson Mandela? She said yes. She was at the back of the crowd in her wheelchair. Nelson Mandela stepped off the plane in Detroit, looked past all of the dignitaries. His eyes roved the crowd. He caught someone's eye in the back of the crowd, and Nelson Mandela rushed over and knelt at the chair of Rosa Parks and said, Rosa. That was what Nelson Mandela, she was the person that he wanted to see in the United States, and they did not recognize in Detroit the treasure that they had in Detroit until Nelson Mandela called their attention to this quiet woman of granite, this quiet woman of strength. I met her as a college student in Montgomery, Alabama, when I went to church to hear Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King speak at Reverend Abernathy's church. I was a student at Huntington College. 5 of us went to the service. We were told if we would go to that service, we'd be arrested. At the end of the service, Dr. King came over and said, the 5 of you white students from Huntington College are going to be arrested. The police have the church surrounded. And I said, Dr. King, we need to escape. And he laughed and he said, you know, I told you if you came to the church, you might be arrested. I said, Dr. King, we need to try to escape so we won't get our parents in trouble. We won't get our college in trouble. He said, I see what you mean. He said, I'll ask Reverend Abernathy and Mrs. Rosa Parks to go with you to the basement of the church. I'll go out the front, and if they all run around there, you can run for it. We went down to the basement, and as we waited for Dr. King to go out the front of the church, Mrs. Parks put her hand on my left elbow and said, Bob, if you see something wrong, you have to do something about it. You can't study it forever. We had explained that we were writing a paper on the racial problem, and we only wanted to investigate. And that woman said to me, you have to do something about it, Bob. So I got my cause of the civil rights movement directly from Dr. King and Rosa Parks. That great woman made that challenge to us. When I speak now in schools, I spoke to a first grade in Harwichport, Massachusetts, at the school of Maggie Donovan, who's done the Freedom Curriculum with Harvard School of Education, along with myself. And they did a play about the Montgomery bus boycott. And at the end of their little play, I told the students, the first graders, that I had met Dr. King, and I knew Rosa Parks. One of the little students wrote me a letter and said, I was so excited that you met Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks. Did you know Harriet Tubman? I wrote back and I said, we were in the same movement, but she was there long before I was. Rosa Parks was in this movement long before Martin Luther King, and Martin Luther King is famous the world over. Rosa is now taking her part. She's taking her place on the park bench here in East Hampton, one of the faithful rear areas of the civil rights movement. Great supporters for years and years from this area. A vast history of Underground Railroad and other struggles in eastern Long Island. I'm glad we're honoring that today. So if you have met Rosa Parks, if you have met anyone here who is working every day in the struggle like Lou Ware and the NAACP, everybody should be a member of the NAACP. Of the major organizations, they were here first, they're still here, they're still doing the work. So if you've met Lou, if you've met Rosa Parks, you've met Harriet Tubman. Thank you.